The storm rolled across the night sky like a living creature, snarling thunder down upon Blackstone Estate as if the heavens themselves were warning the world that something terrible was about to unfold. Though Adrian Voss, billionaire, industrial titan, and a man who counted his friends on a single hand, barely noticed as he walked through the cavernous halls of his mansion, the echo of his polished shoes tapping in a steady rhythm that always soothed him after brutal days of meetings, negotiations, and people pretending to admire him because they feared losing his favor. But tonight, something in the air felt different, a quiet tension that he only half registered as he loosened his tie, passed the dim lamps, and entered the dining room where a crystal decanter waited for him beside a plate of untouched food, steam barely clinging to the air as if even the meal itself was uncomfortable in the heavy stillness that had settled over his home. Adrian exhaled, weary, unaware that behind the wall of glass overlooking the storm, a figure stood still as a shadow, watching him, unseen, unnoticed, like a ghost with a heartbeat. He reached for the decanter, ready to pour the one drink he allowed himself each night, the drink that helped him silence the world and set aside the weight of his empire, when the sudden pounding of footsteps broke the ritual. At first he assumed one of the butlers had dropped something or the storm had shaken a shutter loose, but the sound grew louder, faster, carrying a frantic rhythm that didn't belong in his house, and then the kitchen door burst open with violent force. Lila, the new maid, barely a month on staff, barely noticed by him beyond the standard background checks, stumbled into the room, her apron soaked, her braid unraveling, her face pale as bone, her chest heaving like she'd run through fire, and before he could even form a word, she screamed. A raw, desperate, terrified sound that cracked through the mansion like lightning. "Don't drink it." The words hit him harder than any thunderclap outside. Adrian froze, his hands suspended over the decanter, his brows drawing together in confusion so sharp it almost hurt, but Lila kept coming toward him, knocking chairs aside, her hands flying out as if she were reaching for a drowning man, and without thinking, she slapped his hand away and grabbed the glass in front of him, sending it flying across the marble floor where it shattered into a spray of crystal and amber liquid. For a moment, everything held still, time, breath, the storm, even Adrian's thoughts, and all he could hear was the soft, horrifying sound of dripping, poisoned liquor running across the floor tiles like spilled secrets. His shock gave way to anger, not because she had yelled, not because she had broken a glass worth more than her monthly salary, but because she was shaking so violently she could barely stand, and fear like that didn't erupt in trained servants without reason. "What do you think you're doing?" he demanded, voice low, calm, deadly, because calm was the only way he survived in a world where people constantly waited for him to slip. But Lila didn't respond with excuses. She didn't apologize. Instead, she dropped to her knees beside the broken glass and whispered, "It's poisoned, someone put something in it while you were upstairs." Adrian's breath stalled. For a moment he thought she must have misunderstood, overreacted, maybe she mistook something, maybe she panicked, but the words hung in the air like smoke from a gun barrel. Poison. That was not a word spoken lightly, not in his world, not in his house, not in a mansion with security protocols that cost more than small countries. "Explain," he ordered. Lila looked up at him, eyes wide, shimmering with tears she was clearly trying to hold back, and she said, voice cracking, "I saw someone near your private bar. They poured something into the decanter. They knew what they were doing. They were fast, practiced. And when they noticed me watching," she swallowed hard, her gaze flicking toward the dark hallway behind her, "they disappeared into the house." Adrian's skin prickled. He didn't frighten easily. He was a billionaire by 32 because he learned early that fear was a liability, something to be carved out of himself with discipline and logic. But Lila's voice didn't carry the tremble of a liar or the bravado of someone trying to impress their employer. It carried something far worse, truth coded in absolute terror. "Who did you see?" he pressed. But she just shook her head helplessly. I didn't see their face. It was too dark. Only their outline." Adrian moved past her, ignoring her gasp as he crouched slightly and examined the spilled drink. There was nothing unusual about the color, no strange smell, no hint that anything was wrong, except the fact that his maid had risked her job, her safety, and her dignity to stop him from drinking it. Something in his chest tightened. Before he could say another word, the mansion lights flickered. Once, twice, Then every light in the house cut out at the same exact second the thunder cracked across the sky. The security system hummed, then sputtered, then went silent. Adrian's jaw clenched. Backup power should have kicked in, he muttered, mostly to himself. Lila stood, steps shaky. It was fine earlier today, she whispered. The emergency lights finally flickered on, a faint red glow that painted the hallways like spilled blood and cast long, warped shadows across the floors, shadows that seemed to breathe in the dimness. Adrian reached for his phone to check the security feed, but before he could open the app, a notification flashed across the screen: all cameras offline. His heart didn't beat faster, but a cold, controlled stillness settled over him, the way it always did before he made the hardest decisions in boardrooms or cut off the most dangerous enemies in his business life. Someone had infiltrated his home. Someone who knew how to disable his systems. Someone who knew his habits. And someone who expected him to take that drink. "You said they're still in the house?" he asked quietly. Lila nodded, wrapping her arms around herself like she was afraid the walls might reach out and grab her. "They were behind the liquor shelves, hiding. I saw movement before the lights went out. And I heard," her voice faltered. "I heard them breathing." Adrian straightened. "Stay behind me," he said. "My guards are," but as if mocking him, his phone buzzed again. "Security chief. Sir, exterior patrols are locked out. Gate systems aren't responding. We're trying to force override, but someone jammed communications. Proceed with caution. We're coming around the perimeter." 5 minutes. Not fast enough. Not nearly fast enough. Adrian knew that whoever poisoned the drink had wanted him dead before help arrived. This wasn't a warning or an intimidation tactic. This was an execution attempt. Lila stepped closer to him, her voice tiny, fragile. "Mr. Voss, I think they knew you would drink it right away. I think they planned it. I think whoever is here tonight didn't expect me to see them." Her voice trembled as she added, "And I don't think they'll let me leave this house alive after stopping them." Adrian looked at her, then really looked at her, for the first time, not as a staff member, not as a name on a payroll, but as a human being caught in something far larger and darker than she understood. She wasn't lying. And she wasn't safe. "You're staying with me," he said firmly. "Don't wander. Don't make noise." She nodded, but her breathing remained uneven, her hands cold as he placed a steadying grip on her shoulder. Another crack of lightning illuminated the glass walls, and for the briefest fraction of a second Adrian saw it, a reflection that didn't belong to either of them. A silhouette standing behind one of the pillars. Watching. Waiting. Calm. Patient. Gone the second the darkness returned. Lila gasped softly, clutching his sleeve. Adrian turned slowly toward the pillar, scanning every inch of the room, but the red emergency lights made everything blur together in unsettling shapes. He didn't speak. He didn't call out. He didn't show fear, because predators thrived on it. Instead, he tapped his phone, enabling silent alarm protocols, ones only he could trigger, and then guided Lila backward, step by controlled step, until they reached the edge of the dining room. "We're going to my study," he murmured. "Panic room access is hidden there." But Lila shook her head violently. "We can't go that way," she whispered. "That's the direction they ran. I know it. I swear I know it." His jaw tightened. He didn't like relying on emotion. But instinct. Instinct he trusted. His own, and hers. "Fine," he said. "Then we'll take the east corridor. Stay quiet. Stay close." They moved in silence except for the distant rumble of the storm, and every creak of the old floorboards felt amplified, every shadow seemed to shift, every whisper of wind sounded like breathing. They reached the corridor, cold, long, with windows running its entire length, and the storm lit up the sky again, revealing for a horrifying second a handprint smeared on the outside glass, fingers dragging downward like someone had tried to claw their way in or out. Lila grabbed Adrian's arm so hard he nearly winced. "That wasn't there earlier today," she breathed. "I cleaned this hallway." Adrian didn't answer. His mind raced, calculating angles, possibilities, motives. Who would do this? Who would dare infiltrate his home? Who would poison him? The list wasn't small, but only a handful knew his nightly routine. Only a handful knew which drink he always poured first. Only a handful knew he would be alone for 20 minutes before security finished rounds. This was an inside job. But which inside? Someone on staff. Someone from his business rivals bribing their way into his household. Or someone far more personal, someone from the past he had buried, or thought he had. They reached the end of the corridor, almost to the service staircase, when the mansion's speakers, dead from the blackout, suddenly crackled to life. A voice slipped through them, distorted, low, whispering across every room like a serpent sliding through the walls. Adrian. Lila stiffened, terror choking her breath. Adrian froze, listening as the voice, genderless, cold, continued, "You should have taken the drink." Lila whimpered softly. Adrian's pulse remained steady, but the ice in his veins grew sharper. The intruder wasn't just inside the mansion. They were inside his system. Inside his life. Inside his personal history. "Run," he whispered to Lila, not loud, not panicked, but firm, commanding. She nodded, trusting him without hesitation. They sprinted toward the service stairs just as the lights flickered violently, plunging the corridor into near darkness again, but not before Adrian caught one final glimpse of something moving at the far end of the hall. A figure. Silent. Steady. Watching them run. And smiling. As the storm swallowed the mansion in another roar of thunder, Adrian Voss, billionaire who feared nothing, finally understood the truth Lila had tried to scream into him earlier. Someone hadn't come to scare him. Someone hadn't come to threaten him. Someone had come to kill him. And they were still here.